Welcome to the Psych Central Show, where each episode presents an in-depth look at issues from the field of psychology and mental health, with host Gabe Howard and co-host Vincent M. Wales.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Psych Central Show podcast. My name is Gabe Howard, and with me, as always, is Vincent M. Wales. And before we get to our great guest, we want to give a nod to our sponsors over at BetterHelp.com. So remember, you can get 1 week of convenient, affordable, private online counseling anytime, anywhere by visiting BetterHelp.com/PsychCentral. And without further ado, Keith O'Neill is with us, who won a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Great. So obviously we didn't have you on the show because you won a Super Bowl. I mean, probably. I don't know. It just maybe because I just happen to think that that's really cool. But we're having you on the show because you're a person who lives with bipolar disorder. Just like me. You're right. You live with bipolar disorder.
Yeah, I was diagnosed 7 years ago at the age of 30. Actually, after I retired from playing in the NFL, I was diagnosed.
When you were playing in the NFL, did you suspect something was going on? Did you have symptoms? Did you have problems? Can you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. It was, I always say when people ask me this type of question that my time in the NFL was very bittersweet. You know, I was living my childhood dream. I was making a good amount of money playing the game I loved, but I was battling symptoms of undiagnosed bipolar disorder the entire time, from anxiety, massive anxiety, to insomnia, to I never had a complete manic episode until after I retired, but I did suffer with symptoms of bipolar.
And how long had that been going on before you thought to investigate it further?
Well, I started having symptoms of bipolar when I was a little kid, from anxiety, insomnia, depression, all the way through until I retired from the NFL. I actually walked away from the game because of my mental health, and it helped that we won a Super Bowl, being the last game I ever played in. But then I got diagnosed at the age of 30 after my wife had a miscarriage, and I went into a complete manic episode where I was lost touch with reality and was in psychosis, and that's when I got my diagnosis.
And what was that like for you? Because, listen, let's speak a little real for a moment. Not only are you a man, and it's hard for men to accept, mental illness, it seems, but you're a football player. So you're the manliest man there is, in our culture. And now you're diagnosed with bipolar disorder. Did that play a role for you, or was that just irrelevant to you? How did you feel about that?
Well, my diagnosis, to be real, it was terrible. I don't even know the words how to explain what I was going through, because to be honest, I was so sick and I was so confused when I got diagnosed, and I fell into a dark depression for 18 months that I didn't even tell anybody for about almost 3 years that I had bipolar disorder, besides my immediate family and a few close friends, because I don't know if I was shamed, but I was just confused. I didn't know how to deal with it. And my life had always been so public, being an NFL football player and a college football player, that it was hard to live with this diagnosis and not tell anybody. So eventually I said I had enough of this, and I went public with it. And that helped tremendously with my recovery, or my wellness, finding wellness.
So what kind of reactions did you get from friends and family once you did tell them?
The same as we all expect. People didn't know what to say. People, they were supportive in the way that they were, they would listen, but I was upset with the reactions. I wasn't getting phone calls. I wasn't getting cards. I wasn't getting anything. It was just, oh, okay, that's why you disappeared for 3 years. It was a really tough time. It was a really tough transition, going from the NFL to the real world. And then on top of that, getting diagnosed with bipolar and going through what I went through, it was enormously just really tough.
When you finally came out publicly, you said you lived kind of a public life because of being a college football player and an NFL player. When you came out publicly, what was that like? I mean, that's just something that most of us don't have to deal with.
At first, it was very liberating. I was living this secret, and like I said, my life had always been public. I did it on a Facebook post, to be honest with you. I just typed in, I have bipolar disorder, and I'm going to do everything I can for the rest of my life to raise mental health awareness. At that time, I was starting a foundation for mental health and to fund research. And it was just very liberating, and I could finally just move on and, breathe. And it helped my family out tremendously because they had been living the secret too.
So because this was a public admission, did the news cover it, the media, anything happen like that?
It wasn't like it was like breaking news on like Sports Center or NFL Network or anything, because I really wasn't a superstar when I played. I was just a grunt that played special teams and had to make it every year. But, like some news outlets covered it, and I got in some magazines, and Bipolar BP Hope magazine covered a story on me. And, some people in the mental health world were really excited that I was talking about it, and I was excited about that I was talking about it. And my goal is just to help others who suffer with this illness, because I know what it's like, and it's tough, and the stigma that surrounds it is tough. And I always say, like, the secrecy and the stigma that I lived with was almost as bad as the illness itself. So once I went public, even my health started getting better, because I was able to go to therapy and talk to people about therapy. I was able to go to my psychiatrist and not have to, be able to talk to people. Oh yeah, I was at my psychiatrist, and I don't even care anymore. Like, everyone knows I talk about it. It's
Good.
just the way it is.
So tell me about that foundation that you mentioned.
Sure, it's called Fourth and Forever. It's a play on words for football. We raise mental health awareness and we fund research. We've been able to give numerous gifts back to the University at Buffalo Department of Psychiatry for bipolar research, and the reason is because that's who really helped me out during my struggles with bipolar disorder was the University at Buffalo. I go around the country and I speak to high schools, non-for-profits about my story, and in hopes to helping other people.
You said that you go around the country and talk to high schools.
Yeah.
I work as a speaker as well, and I'm terrified of high schools. What's your message? How do you connect with the kids? Because, young people are the future. They're very important, and they're also the most willing to learn. And frankly, they've been the most open about mental health and mental illness topics. But it is difficult to connect with them. They kind of look at anybody above 25 as old, out of touch, and irrelevant. And I know you're very successful at this. What's your secret to getting through and educating high schoolers?
To be honest, it helps when you walk in with a Super Bowl ring. And
all right, that's the secret.
Now you know what you got to do, Gabe.
Yeah, as soon as I win a Super Bowl, so you kind of lead with that. It sounds like.
Absolutely. It catches their attention. I do two different kinds of settings. I do the classroom setting, and I do the auditorium speech. I can do either one. And when I do the classroom setting, like the health classes, I do a PowerPoint presentation. I show pictures of me when I was a captain. I show pictures of me with Peyton Manning holding the Super Bowl trophy. And that's what I start with and say, this is who I am. This is bipolar. This is what it looks like. We can talk about it. It can be anybody, so I grab their attention. Then, I tell them my story and how I, lived with it as a child and through high school, and how I had to fight to get through it and not knowing what was going on for 30 years. And I talk about, I had a suicide attempt. I talk about that and talk about how happy to be alive today. Life is a gift. And I just go in, I speak from the heart, and it really helps. And not only does it help the students, but it helps the faculty as well, because they need to learn about mental illness as well.
I have two questions for you. I'm going to ask you one right after the other. The first question is, what kind of questions do you get from faculty?
I really don't get many questions from faculty, to be honest with you. I get them they let the kids do most of the talking. The number one question I get from the kids, I open up the questions at the end. I said, hey guys, you can ask me anything you want. It can be about football. It can be about mental health. Don't be afraid to raise your hand. I'm just a normal dude, who played in the NFL, who is successful, that has bipolar disorder. Just raise your hand, and one hand will go up first. And the question always is, what was it like to play with Peyton Manning? It never fails. And I'm just it's just, everyone wants to know what it's like to play with one of the best football players ever play the game. But then once one hand goes up, another one will go up and say, what was the effect it had on your wife and your kids and your family? I get that a lot, because I think a lot of these students and a lot of these kids are living with people, family members who might be suffering as well. And I tell them it's hard on them, but they're supportive, and it's very important to support, those who have mental illness, because at times they need it, at times they don't. So that's probably like the two questions I get the most.
What's great is, and this is embarrassing, my second question is, what was it like to play with Peyton Manning?
Honestly, he was great. He's a stand-up guy, caring. He's as funny as he is in his commercials. He opened his house up to my wife and I when I was new with the team. He invited us over for Thanksgiving dinner. He's just a really good dude.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp.com. Secure, convenient, and affordable online counseling. All counselors are licensed, accredited professionals. Anything you share is confidential. Schedule secure video or phone sessions, plus chat and text with your therapist whenever you feel it's needed. A month of online therapy often costs less than a single traditional face-to-face session. Go to BetterHelp.com/PsychCentral and experience 7 days of free therapy to see if online counseling is right for you. BetterHelp.com/PsychCentral.
I'm not a big NFL person, and I'm more into college football, but it seems like there's a camaraderie amongst teams, players. It's good to be part of a group. Do you feel that being part of that group helped you when you were undiagnosed and in trouble, like suffering symptoms, or did it not really play a factor at all?
When I was playing in the NFL, I hid everything. I wouldn't tell anybody, not even the trainers. I'm getting ahead of myself here. I did tell people eventually, my trainers and my coaches, but as far as teammates, I hid it. I hid my anxiety, I hid my insomnia, I hid what was going on with me, because I didn't want them to think I was weak, or I didn't want to get anyone involved in my stuff. And I wouldn't let my wife talk to any of the players' wives about it. And I had a good group of friends for the Colts that had no idea what was going on until I was diagnosed, and then until I wrote the book, and they read it, and they're like, wow, like, we had no idea. I'm like, I know, I hid it all.
Keith, at what stage in your life was your suicide attempt, and was there something specific that triggered that?
Yes, I was diagnosed at age 30 after a manic episode, and I fell into a depression for about 18 months, and it was filled with anxiety and depression and mixed states, I guess. And one night I just decided I wanted it all to end. And I went upstairs in my bedroom and overdosed on pills. And I ended up in a psychiatric hospital for about a week. And it was awful. And I ended up, after that, meeting with Dr. Stephen Dubofsky at the University of Buffalo. And he really helped me get on the right path. And it took a couple of years to finally find the right meds and find a balance in life. But that was 5 years ago, and now I'm doing much better.
Good. Glad to hear that.
Yeah, we're very glad to hear that. Your story is, it mirrors a lot of people's stories, of course. It's this idea of, there's a problem and you're not sure what it is. You find out what it is, but help isn't readily available. And maybe even it's readily available, but you're not sure how to interpret it, take it, understand it. There's shame, etc. And then a crisis point happens. For the lucky ones, we get hospitalization, we get treatment, and it sort of accelerates our recovery. That's certainly what happened with me, and it sounds like what happens with you. I know this is a kind of a tough question, but how could society have worked with you better to get you on the right path without having to reach, that low point, that dangerous low point?
I know you said that's a very hard question, but to me it's kind of easy. If mental illness and bipolar disorder were accepted in our society, it would have been a lot easier for me. I secluded myself. I isolated myself. I was ashamed at first. I was sick. My brain was sick, I just had an illness, and I just wanted it to be okay to talk about it. And like I said earlier, once I started talking about it is once I started feeling better. And once I started educating people on it and going public, I started feeling better. So I think if things could be different in our society and mental illness was talked about more, things would have helped me a lot better.
Well, you're certainly doing your part now to help make that a reality with the touring to the schools and the foundation that you have. And last year you released a book.
That's right. I did. It took me 4 years to write, to be honest with you. It was a process in itself. I started writing it not knowing it was going to be a book. And then 4 years later, after jumping through a bunch of hoops and it got published, which was difficult in itself, was just to find a publishing company to believe in my story. And now it's out there. It's titled Under My Helmet, and it's doing pretty well.
Good. Glad to hear it.
Obviously, we know the book is about your life. We given that the name is Under the Helmet, we got to figure there's a football theme. But aside from all, and it's about bipolar disorder, but aside from all of that, what would you say the book is about? Like what are the themes outside of mental illness and football?
It's about overcoming adversity. It's about triumph. It's about setbacks. It's about redemption. It's about playing in the NFL with an undiagnosed mental illness. It's about giving up. It's about never giving up, though, as well. It's not just a mental health book. It's a book about being a bubble player, which means a football player that's not a superstar, and what it's like to play in the NFL when you're not known, you're not a big star. And I know a lot of people think, oh, you won a Super Bowl, you play in the league, you're a superstar, but I wasn't. I was a special teams player. I had to fight every year to make the team that I played for. I was an undrafted free agent out of a small school. So it's about that. It's about never giving up. It's about resiliency and overcoming adversity.
I love that. I think anybody that lives well, with bipolar disorder, in spite of any mental illness, can really relate to the theme of overcoming adversity. Because not only do we have to overcome our illnesses, we have to overcome all of the just piles of garbage that society puts on us. We're sick and discriminated against. We're sick and we feel shame. We're sick and traumatized. It sounds like a lot of those themes really resonate with you, and this is what you give to your audiences, via your book and your speeches. Is that a fair statement?
It's very fair. It's a whole lot packed into one.
Keith, I understand that you had a coach in the NFL who gave you some wisdom, something about beating the demon.
Coach Bill Parcells, one of the toughest, most legendary coaches to ever coach the game, Hall of Famer. Actually, a little side story. He coached my father for the New England Patriots, and my father played in the NFL.
Wow.
And he cut my father on August 26th, 1980, the same day I was born. So football's been in my blood since the day I was born. But the Beat the Demon story, I was playing for Coach Parcells, 23 years later for the Dallas Cowboys. And it was after my first season, and I was going through insomnia. I hadn't slept in about 3 nights, and I had enough of playing football. I wanted to quit because I didn't know anything else. I didn't know how to reach out for help. I didn't know what to do. So I walked into the complex, the Cowboys complex, with my playbook, and I walked into his office and sat down and looked at him and I said, "Coach, I quit." And he looked at me and he said, "What? Are you crazy?" I mean, those are the exact words that came out of his mouth. And I looked at him right in the eye and I said, "Yeah. I haven't been sleeping. I haven't slept in 3 nights and I don't know what's going on." And he looked at me and he said, "Keith, we all have a demon in our head. Every single one of us has a demon. Our job as not only football players but humans is to beat that demon." So I took out my playbook right there and I took a magic marker off his desk and I wrote across the top of my playbook, I wrote, "Beat the demon." So he looked at me and he said, "Get the hell out of my office. You're not quitting." And that was it. I went on and played another year with the Cowboys, and then I got picked up by the Colts the next year. So it was pretty intense, to say the least.
And it sounds like Beat the Demon has kind of become your mantra. I mean, does it help you through tough times, move you forward, move the needle when you're stressed or depressed?
It didn't really get to the root of the problem. I found other ways than just to say beat the demon in my head. There's a lot of other ways that I live now to get through stressful situations, stress in my life, live healthy with bipolar. I've learned that exercise is by far the number one medicine for me. I've learned talk therapy, being vocal, but don't get me wrong, I have Beat the Demon written across the front of my treadmill. So when I'm running, I think about it still. I mean, that was 15 years ago.
That's great.
Yeah.
Please.
I've also had a lot of other coaches in my life. One in particular, Tony Dungy, who has really helped me get through difficult times in my life. And he did the foreword to my book, and I'm so honored that he did it. He's such a great man and someone that, I know is in my corner, and he helped me get through a very, very difficult time in my life. And I always tell people when I speak to them, you can always ask people for help. And I wasn't ashamed, or I wasn't scared, or I wasn't weak. I walked into Coach Dungy's office one day, and I wanted to quit football, but I wanted help more. And I asked him, I said, Coach, I'm dealing with anxiety and insomnia. Can you please help me? And he did. He brought in the coaching staff. He brought in the general manager, the doctors, the team trainers. He even brought my wife in, who was sitting in the car. And we talked about my issues. And for the first time in my life, this is when I was playing with the Colts, obviously, I was prescribed medication. And it just goes to show it doesn't matter what level you're at. Even if you're playing in the league, that there's people out there that are willing to help you. And I had guys like Bill Parcells and Tony Dungy and Bill Polian who were in my corner that were willing to help people who struggle with mental health issues.
And I think it illustrates that we can't do it alone. Sometimes beating the demon requires a team. And as somebody who played professional team sports, I'm sure that resonates a lot with you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Keith, earlier in the show, you mentioned that your wife had a miscarriage. Did you ever start a family, or are you a father?
Yes, I'm a proud father of 2 boys. Connor's 5 and Tanner is 2. They run around, they keep me busy when I'm not working on my foundation or raising mental health awareness. I am a stay-at-home father. My wife works part-time. She's a registered nurse. So we're pretty busy.
I think that's incredible. One of the things that we do here, out in society is that, people with bipolar disorder shouldn't have children, or people with mental illness shouldn't have children. And then, of course, bipolar disorder is passed genetically. So, a parent with bipolar disorder is more likely to have a child with bipolar disorder. How do you feel about all of that? Just the way that society sort of feels about people in our position, being parents.
I think it's ridiculous, to be honest with you. I think people, first of all, people who suffer, or I don't even want to say suffer, people who live with bipolar disorder are the most caring, passionate people there are. Ever since I've been diagnosed, I've met many people now who have bipolar, and they're caring, they're hard workers, they're compassionate, and they're definitely equipped to be parents. My wife and I'm a great parent. I'll say it. I know how to raise, I'll know how to raise my boys. I'm no doubt about it.
Keith, that's wonderful. I couldn't agree more. I was one of the people that sort of bought into that stereotype that people living with bipolar disorder shouldn't have kids. And it's one of my, it's probably my biggest regret that I believed what society was telling me rather than reflecting inward on my own abilities. I'm glad that you didn't suffer the same consequences, because I'm sure your children are great, and I'm sure you're a great father. I'm glad that bipolar disorder didn't take that away from you.
Well, thanks. And it just makes me think, people who say that people who have bipolar disorder shouldn't be parents, or people with mental illness shouldn't have parents, it kind of gets me mad, and it makes me want to say, what's wrong with having bipolar disorder? Very successful people have bipolar disorder. Yeah, we see things differently sometimes, and we've been through a lot more than most people. I think it makes us stronger. It makes us stronger people. It makes us, be able to know how to raise children and empathize with them and teach them empathy and teach them how to treat people, because we've seen pain and we know what it's like. That's how I feel.
That's an excellent point, Keith. So what do you think the future's got in store for you? What's next on your agenda?
I'm going to write another book. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
No way. No way. There's no way that's ever going to happen again. But no, I'm very, 2018 is going to be a great year for my foundation. It's already started off better than the last 3 years. I have speaking engagements all over the country. I'm excited. I'm speaking at schools like Stanford and the University of Oklahoma. I want to raise money for research, and, I want to grow in love with my wife and my kids and my family. And I have a great knit group of friends who help me and are there to support me and my foundation. So I'm excited about the future. I've learned from the past, and I'm looking ahead.
Fantastic. So tell us how our listeners can find you. You have a website. I'm sure your book's on Amazon.
Yeah, absolutely. My book's on Amazon under my helmet. I have a website, personal website. It's keithoneal.com, and from there you can find my foundation. I'm also on Facebook and Twitter. I'm new to Twitter. I'm finding out it's a game, and I'm starting to get addicted to it already. It's an adult game.
Yes, social media will suck you in and spit you out, and you'll enjoy every moment of it right up until you don't.
I'm very impulsive. I had a Twitter account, and I one day I was like, I'm sick of Twitter, and I deleted it. And then like 6 months later, here I am starting from scratch. I'm like, oh, you get those Twitter followers up again. Here we go.
What's your Twitter handle?
Keith O'Neill 41.
Keith O'Neill 41. And is 41 the number when you played?
Yeah, I was number 41 in college. So
number 41 in college. Excellent. What numbers were you when you played in the NFL?
I was number 54 for the Cowboys and 53 for the Colts and 54 for the Giants.
This is now the real last question because I've always been curious about it. How do you get a number in the NFL? Do you get to select it yourself? Is it assigned?
That's a great question. If you're a linebacker, you have to be like a linebacker or someone that plays on defense in a certain position. You have to be in the 50s or the 90s. There's no question about it. It's a rule the NFL has. Most linebackers are in the 50s. And when I showed up for the Cowboys, they just gave me a number. They're like, here's your number. You're number 54. And then when I made the team, they're like, do you want to keep your number? And I always thought 54 was a cool number. So I was like, yeah, I'll keep it. But if like someone has the number already, you can't really take it from them. But you can buy it from them if you want to. Yeah, it's crazy. People will buy numbers off people. Dude, I'll buy your number for like $20,000. I mean, it gets up there. Yeah. So it's just really to answer your question, they're really just giving out, and you just take what you get.
Just take what you get. I love it. All right. Well, thank you, Keith, for being on the show. The time just flies by. We really appreciate you being here. And hopefully someday soon I can see your Super Bowl ring because much like the kids that you speak to, having a Super Bowl ring is definitely very cool.
I'm not going to lie, it is.
Thanks for being here, Keith.
Really
it was fun.
If there's anything you need, let me know.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, everybody. Thank you for tuning in, and we will see you all next week here on the Psych Central Show podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Psych Central Show. Please rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes or wherever you found this podcast. We encourage you to share our show on social media and with friends and family. Previous episodes can be found at psychcentral.com/show. PsychCentral.com is the internet's oldest and largest independent mental health website. Psych Central is overseen by Dr. John Grohol, a mental health expert and one of the pioneering leaders in online mental health. Our host, Gabe Howard, is an award-winning writer and speaker who travels nationally. You can find more information on Gabe at gabehoward.com. Our co-host, Vincent M. Wales, is a trained suicide prevention crisis counselor and author of several award-winning speculative fiction novels. You can learn more about Vincent at vincentmwales.com. If you have feedback about the show, please email talkback@psychcentral.com.